Last of the devotionals or devotionals, it's always been interesting that Spurgeon is used by most people and talked about. And when I found out his history, I was amazed, and then I found out who taught him, and I was amazed by that. But a lot of times, most people that read Spurgeon don't understand him because he's so King James or, so Elizabethan. But I find, and I have found, that even when I have read him over the years, I thought to leave him out this video series because I thought, well, it might be too complicated because, the reading mentality of the nation right now is very, very low. Is that the production of movies, the television industry itself, the reading level of books and magazines and newspapers have gone so low that, we need to simplify and make it childlike, because people just aren't into vocabulary that possibly Spurgeon would have. So I was praying and I thought, Lord, I don't know. I think Spurgeon's too much for people, and it just might be, more than they could handle. And on the day that I sat down to share the devotionals, I saw the book again, and as I was recording, I walked over to it and I said, well, Lord, I haven't really asked you, and I flipped it open, and it said at the time, if I remember right, something about, make my word known, and I went, okay, that about solved it. So keeping Spurgeon with the devotionals, has been a joy, because as I went through them, every time that I started to think that I was getting off on a tangent, God would bring it into focus, and so it's a joy that I have to read it, because it brings me back to the sing-song poetry of articulation that Spurgeon has. And so, in Spurgeon, tell me, I pray thee, wherein thy great strength lieth, from Judges. Where lies the secret strength of faith? It lies in the food it feeds on. For if faith studies what the promise is, an emanation of divine grace, an overflowing of the great heart of God, and faith says, my God could not have given this promise except from love and grace. Therefore it is quite certain his word will be fulfilled. Then faith thinketh, who gave this promise? It considereth not so much its greatness as who is the author of it. She remembers that it is God who cannot lie, God omnipotent, God immutable, and therefore concludeth that the promise must be fulfilled, and forward she advances in this firm conviction. She remembereth why the promise was given, namely for God's glory, and she feels perfectly sure that God's glory is safe, that he will never stain his own escutcheon. Wow. And I know a lot of vocabulary. Escutcheon. He will not stain his own escutcheon, nor mar the luster of his own crown, and therefore the promise must and will stand. And that's the other reason I love Spurgeon, because every now and then I'll get a word and I go, wow, I have never read one like that. I've read a lot of things overseas in different countries, but sometimes I get a word every now and then that just blows my mind. And quite a few times in Spurgeon. Then, being a clear proof of the Father's intention to fulfill his word, he that spared not his own Son, but freely delivered him up for us all, how shall he not with him also freely give us all things? Moreover, faith looks back upon the past, for her battles have strengthened her, and her victories have given her courage. She remembers that God never has failed her, nay, that he never did once fail any of his children. She recollects times of great peril when deliverance came, hours of awful need when as her day her strength was found, and she cries, no, I will never be led to think that he can change and leave his servant now. Hitherto the Lord hath helped me, and he will help me still. Thus faith views each promise in its connection with the promise giver, and because she does so, can say with assurance, surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. That So a lot of Spurgeon's devotionals could actually be more listed as Bible studies, because if you took apart, as he did, those words about who is giving the promise, what the promise is, why the promise was given, how the promise is fulfilled, and everything about it, then it makes it what I call intelligent faith. Because sometimes people will quote a scripture and just keep quoting it like a magpie, thinking they're exercising faith, or somehow that they're speaking, they get this idea from some faith movement sometimes about speaking it into existence. And in the reality is not that it's spoken into existence, but that the person who promised it is going to do it anyways, and you didn't need to say it in the first place or the last place, because God is the one who's doing it and accomplishing it. So who cares if you say it or believe it? The fact is all you have to do is know it. So it's sad to kick sometimes some of these childish tools that are used, when you play in sandboxes and you need to, I need to do this in order to get this, and I need to be this in order to have this, and I need to go there in order to be there, And the reality is, it's just like Spurgeon said, when you consider who you're talking about and what you're talking about, you really don't need to do a whole lot of talking about it, because it's God. It's that simple. You trust or you don't. For me, it's pretty simple. I have spent years in developing my theological background. In being able to discourse with anyone in most of the major religions and a lot of the cults and things about any kind of theological doctrine or dogma or, hermeneutic or homiletic or any application of religious law that they exercise in their religious practices according to their own definitions, so that I could likewise understand where they were coming from. And it was fun for me intellectually. It was kind of a waste of time as far as faith was concerned, because bottom line is that in every one of my studies in theology, that it would always bring it back to the simplicity that really Jesus always has said and brought about, which is simply, you trust him or you don't. It boils down to that. And then if you kept cutting through the jargon, you get to the heart of what God is, which is relationship. And it's amazing to me how we can try to disguise it in order to make it feel right and do things that don't really matter too much to God, and still think that we're feeling more so holy, when in reality God doesn't care about our holiness. He cares about who we are in our dailiness in spending time with him. So, you can go and put on your kippahs, or you could put on your robes of righteousness, or you can don your little prayer shawls, or you could put on your little prayer blankets, or your prayer napkins, or your prayer this or prayer that, and you could pick up a missal, or you could pick up a siddur, or you could daven, or you could genuflect, or you can make the way of the cross, or you can kiss the foot or the finger or the ring or the Torah or the scripture or the Bible, or you can just simply sit down like we're doing today and talk to God. And whatever works for you, this is a big if now. This is my big summation. I'm rolling it all up like Spurgeon would. And coming all to the glory of the summation of our faith, and being an exemplimentation of all that God has said and performed and able to do within us, as Spurgeon would do, then coming to that conclusion is simply this one thing. If God is speaking to you and what you did works, then do it. If he isn't, don't do it. It's that simple. If it doesn't work, don't do it. Gee, I think it doesn't get much simpler than that. And that's what Jesus said. He had a personal relationship with his Father, and he wants us to have it too.